Hello, Hockey World. It's definitely Friday this time. It's Friday, June 29th, 2018.
I'm Michael Agello on location.
I'm Peter Tessier in my usual location.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. That's all you get.
I'm Eklund. You're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we are at the breaking point now for John Tavares, it feels like. Last night, a couple things happened. Just a lot of murmurs. Nothing happened, but a lot of sudden speculation on San Jose took over last night, I found. And I don't know that anybody knows anything. I don't even know where this came from. I saw Arthur Staples' tweet that you guys sent to me.
Yeah.
Really, I didn't get back to you on it because really it was just, it's believed that John Tavares walks away from the Islanders as the Sharks and leaves as number 1 and 2 on his list, which is really, that's not news.
Right, but I got the impression from that report, and again, everything is interpretation. Nobody knows anything. Drager's not saying anything. McKenzie's not saying anything. Elliot Friedman, none of them have any kind of insight into this. So CAA and Brisson and Tavares have kept their cards close to the vest. But in reading Arthur Staples' piece, it sounded like, and knowing his ties to the Islanders, without saying it, he was saying he's not going back to the Islanders. That was the impression that I got.
Yeah, I mean, that's very possible, I mean, and I would have to think, we've said this before many times, but I would have to think that the longer this goes, the more it's not the Islanders. That's real. I mean, because if it's the Islanders, you tell them right away. Now,
you'd make an instant decision.
Russ.
No, I would say I would think if it were the Islanders, you would make an instant decision. You wouldn't have anything to narrow down or hold back on.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm thinking. So I think that's sort of where we are, right? And I was told, I'm not sure if this is out there somewhere else, it probably is, but that the Islanders would find out sometime today around noon, around lunchtime, that Tavares, they were expecting to get some kind of a call from Tavares around lunchtime today, noon Eastern time.
Yeah, but it could be lunchtime San Jose time. That was
noon Eastern time. It was for the Islanders. So it was, which was about 2 hours from now, just a little under 2 hours from now. And I usually when you hear something like that, it's usually like maybe a little bit before that. So we're going to end the show a little bit early because I think I'm going to be chasing some things as well. But
it's
going to happen today. In other words, it really does sound like it's going to happen today.
The one thing that's interesting is that if you expect things to unfold today, sort of like something coming out saying, well, Boston and Dallas are out. No, the first thing that really has to be determined, the first thing that's going to be coming out is Islanders or not Islanders. Then maybe there's the list being narrowed. But if the first thing coming out is Boston and Dallas are out, then the Islanders are out too, because there's no reason to winnow the list to a few if the Islanders are still on it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think you're right about that. I mean, I think that's why I get a really strong suspicion that it is going to be today, and I think it's going to be either San Jose or Toronto. I really do. And I don't know which way to go from there. And it's interesting how, to me, once you've decided it's not the Islanders for John, if you're John Tavares, there's like the first decision is it's not the Islanders, right? And then after that, it does get complicated, and then you could see Toronto and San Jose going back and forth a little bit on offers, right? And on how they're going to do this, on how they're going to manipulate this. I really do believe this, that you could see a 1-year deal with Tavares from either of those teams, and then followed up by a 8-year deal in January or whenever they're allowed to start negotiating again. Makes it into a 9-year deal, which kind of eliminates the whole problem. Now that's granted, Tavares between now and January, but the chances are slim that it's a career-ending injury between now and then.
Well, just on that point, San Jose has got a ton of cap space, but they have players that they have to sign.
Right.
And it's never been out there regarding San Jose that they're willing to do the 1-8 scenario, whereas Toronto, I think they were the originator of the 1-8 scenario, and they have the cap space and I think the financial backing to go 1-8 on a deal with Tavares. So I think that's sort of a leg up on Toronto, but in no means does that mean that they have, the advantage. It's going to be where Tavares wants to play. But if it's San Jose, then I think it's limited to the 7 years, whereas I think Toronto can go 9 and probably can blow him away in terms of money, because they can pay him $16 million front loaded on a 1-year deal and then pay him $10 to $11 million on an 8-year extension.
Correct. And I think we're all going to be happy when Tavares is figured out, because there's so many other players to get to. Paul Stastny I want to go to next, because obviously we're hearing Winnipeg's trying to. Winnipeg is in cap hell there, Peter, as far as goes. It might be hard. I just heard Darren Pang on radio saying that he thinks it's St. Louis, Winnipeg, or Colorado, which would be a return for Stastny, right? That's his start.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's some talk that Colorado might be interested. I haven't seen anything come out of Colorado. I've just heard speculation, and I've heard Colorado fans, but I haven't seen any of the Colorado media mention anything. I could have missed it. The interesting thing about Colorado is how long would you want to sign Stastny for there, given the way they're changing that team? It's 2 years, Mike.
3.
Yeah, that's my
three at the most.
And I think that's probably what most teams want. Right. And I think the Jets would probably be in that consideration too. But they have to move salary. And I think one of the interesting things is I don't think there's any sort of urgency on Stastny's part to sign on the dotted line, like right at, opening moments of UFA day. We haven't seen this rush to him. We've seen interest. So I bet you he gives, and there's a report last night that said he wants to return, and it suggested, it was on Twitter, and I'd have to find out where it came from. It came from a media person, but it almost sounded like there was the ability for him to say, I'll give you a little bit of time here to sort out the way to do this. Right. And so I think he's prepared to be a little patient and see if Chevy can do that. And maybe they have to wait. Maybe they don't. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, he's got a captive market, Peter. That's the reason why. I mean, he's number 2 behind Tavares, and number 3 is Tyler Bozak. So, he can afford to wait a few days and let things sort of filter out. I also think, because you said, St. Louis was mentioned. I mean, St. Louis is apparently is going hot and heavy after Ryan O'Reilly. There was a report coming out of St. Louis yesterday of a possible deal with the Sabres involving Robert Thomas, one of their prospects, and a first-round pick, but it got quickly shot down by Jeremy Rutherford. So, the whole thing with O'Reilly is the bonus on July 1, and apparently the Sabres are holding teams' feet to the fire. They're saying, okay, we're going to expect a lot more after July 1st because we've paid $7.5 million to O'Reilly. We may very well keep him after July 1st because we paid him, 90% of his salary. So what the hell is the point of trading him after that?
Well, I mean, but see, that's the whole beauty for the agent of making that deal for the player. Guess what? If you're a team, you say, okay, we'll make a new offer. But guess what? If Buffalo still wants to get rid of him, they're still going to want to get rid of him, and they will have paid the money too. Teams know this.
Yes.
But I think Buffalo is going to say, I want, like, if Robert Thomas and a first-round pick was the price before July 1st, then I think the price is going up.
Yeah,
and if the price,
they didn't keep him, and they don't want to keep him clearly. So, how is it to Buffalo's advantage to keep him?
I think it's their advantage to keep them based on the fact that they're not getting. They want to give them away, Russ. They want to get value for them in a center market that is so bereft of depth that guys like, and I'm not insulting Riley Nash, but Riley Nash is going to get $3 million a year plus on a multi-year deal because the center crop is that bad.
Sure, but getting value and me as another team getting penalized because you had to pay him a bonus doesn't matter. I'm only giving you the offer I'm giving you.
Right.
No, I agree with that 100%. No, I think it's going to get really complicated, to be honest. I think that O'Reilly, they have to move him basically. And I think they do have. I think they have to pay it, and I think they have to. I think they have to do those two things to get what they want, to get value for him, and they can't keep him. But I think once they pay him, I think that does put them. You want to be dealing from a position of strength. That puts them back in that position. Now I want to throw in, by the way, also on Stastny. I know that talking to sources, the Flyers are interested in Stastny as well. They have I think JPR is at the top of the Flyers list. Flyers have a lot of cap space right now, which is kind of a strange. They're sort of the under talked about team that's going into the UFA thing because they aren't in on the big guys, but they have a lot of cap space. And they have for a while.
There was a report yesterday that tied the Flyers to Tyler Bozak based on their need up the middle, and the thing with Bozak is, I mean, Bozak is the plan B for Toronto if Tavares signs elsewhere, but Toronto is very limited in terms of how many years they'd be willing to give him. I think they would go 2. I don't think they're going to go 3 or 4, and teams like Philadelphia might give him 3, and other teams might give him 4. So that's, he's 32 years old, and I think he's got to maximize. This is probably his last big contract. He's going to maximize and get as many years as he possibly can.
For sure, and he's going to get money too. Bozak has a lot of attention. I've heard St. Louis with him. I've heard a lot of teams with him today. Another name I want to throw out there that I heard is Valerie Fitbill, who's another former, going to be soon to be former Flyer, I think, who is I hear is going to return to Detroit. So, where he's been before, and the Red Wings fans I know are not too thrilled about this concept because the Red Wings fans definitely want to move forward, but I don't think it's a bad move for them.
Well, Russ, as seeing Filppula as much as you did last year, I mean, is anybody signing him, would it be any more than a 1-year deal? Because I don't think it would be.
No, because the speed's not good. He was getting towards the end of the season more offensive chances shorthanded than he was at regular strength. So he can still kill penalties, but 5-on-5, he's pretty weak these days. He had moments on the power play, but that's it.
Yeah, he did, and he did some very. He was a very good leader in the locker room.
Sure.
Much more than I thought he would be. Much better than I expected out of him in the locker room. But yeah, I think that you're right. 5-on-5, he had issues for sure.
What I thought was interesting that's been sort of out there in the last 24 hours, it was regarding the Rangers, and I was sort of picking fun at Russ. But, I mean, based on the direction that the Rangers are going, these moves sort of make sense. David Pagnotta of the Fourth Period reported that Leo Komarov, the former Leaf, was close to agreeing to a multi-year deal with the Rangers. And then Larry Brooks this morning said that Ryan Reeves was on their radar. And if you think about it, if they're going with a lot of young guys, they're going to want to protect them and surround them with veteran guys. And Komarov is a veteran guy who, is a rough customer who will slam people against the boards, and Ryan Reeves is a deterrent. So if they're going with the youth movement, if they're going to play Elias Anderson and Cheadle and some of these guys, then having a Reeves and having a Komarov on the roster adds up.
I don't think it adds up for both. To me, there's no need to have both those guys there. I could see Komarov because he has some offensive ability. Reeves really doesn't have any offensive ability. And
right.
So I don't see why you would want both these guys on the roster because, again, deterrence aside, how many guys do we need protecting here? I think that thought, and I always disagree with you on this, Mike, I think that thought is a long gone, bygone era kind of thing, and having one guy in the team is fine. If you have 2 of those guys, to me, you're just taking up a roster spot.
Well, Komarov isn't a protector. He's more of a disturber.
Yeah, he's a disturber, and at least there's offensive ability there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that the Rangers are going to be a team that, they're always so fascinating to watch. And I think that Carlson is going to be a player to watch with them. I really do. I think Erik Karlsson. But I just don't know. The question is, and we talked about this a little yesterday, is, I wanted your opinion on this, Peter, as the business guy, because you are the businessman of this group. Does the potential of a sale, and the guy wrote about this last night, the potential of a sale kind of tie Karlsson into Ottawa for a little bit longer?
No.
You don't think
Nope.
so?
No, I don't think it does. I think Erik Karlsson has to understand, has to look at this, and his advisors have to look at this and say, you could be going down the same road that Carolina is, because once the new owner gets in, depending on who they are, they're going to want their people in. No one's safe. Do you want to stick around for this rebuild? And if you've got I'm not sold on Dorian as a top level GM. Let's be polite about that. So if you don't believe Dorian's that level of GM and you're Erik Karlsson, why would you stick around for the next guy to come in and do things? It doesn't make sense. It makes sense to cut ties. And if you're the new guy, you come in and you sell Karlsson. You sell Karlsson out and get what you can for it. You probably can do a better job than Dorian.
Right now for Karlsson, there's nothing. Like, it seems like, we're not hearing anything about Erik Karlsson being moved last week.
That's true.
My thing is this, Peter, like, he doesn't really necessarily have a choice in there. I mean, he is not a he's not he doesn't have his own things. He can still play it. They can just let him play out the year, and that's what I'm saying. Like, that the point is here that they can actually do that to him if they want to. Will they? That's, I think, the question.
Well, there's no way of predicting what's going to happen with the Senators and this. They just announced a debt offering of $135 million.
Right
now, we get a report that there's an offer to buy a purchase.
Well,
I mean, there's what's going on.
Well, it's funny. It's funny, after we were talking about this yesterday, the COO of the Senators came out and basically body slammed any talk of a sale. He basically said, we're not selling. Eugene Melnyk is not selling. It's bull crap. So I'm telling you right now, Eugene Melnyk will not sell that team until the value of the team is up. And what's going to happen, this is a Miami Marlins situation. They're going to strip that team bare. They're going to get down to the cap floor. They're going to trade Karlsson. They're going to probably try to get rid of Bobby Ryan. It's clear as day. I don't buy this. They're not going to sell this team at the absolute lowest value possible. It makes no business sense. And the more this talk comes out, I think the more entrenched Melnyk is going to be. He's going to say, okay, you know what? You keep starting these rumors. I'm going to sell this team. I'm going to keep it until I piss everybody off.
Yeah, I don't know what's
Melnyk's doubling down on a bad hand right now.
Here's the thing, Peter. There is a four-way trade possibility on Twitter from a guy named Jeremy. Vegas trades William Karlsson. San Jose trades Melker Karlsson. Carolina trades the other Erik Karlsson, and then Ottawa trades Erik Karlsson. It's a four-way Karlsson trade. Even Eck hasn't reported that.
And Washington trades John Karlsson.
Different spelling, Mike. Come on.
I know. No, I love that trade.
And WKRP in Cincinnati trades Arthur Karlsson.
Oh, my God.
No, now we're really this it's great. No, hats off to him. That's a nice.
That is good. I thought that was good.
I think it's really good. I mean, so you don't think so? You think Peter, you still think they move Erik?
It may not happen this weekend, but I think it'll happen. Because I don't think he's going to sign there. To tell you the honest truth, I don't see any reason.
Yes.
Why he could sign there? What positive reason to say I have my last chance to cash in on the super deal? And I'm going to do it with a team that's basically had payroll troubles with its staff this year, allegedly. Let's be allegedly. And now has taken on a $135 million debt facility.
Yeah.
Here's the thing and I haven't checked. I'm sure it's happened, but I can't recall too many teams that have had to issue out debt as a franchise in pro sports recently.
I think it's happened. We just don't hear.
I think it's happened, but I just don't know. Normally that stuff gets out.
It happened.
I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but it's rare.
It happened with the Sabres under John Regas before they went bankrupt and had to sell to Golisano. So it's happened in the past. But I mean, the only positive here for the Senators, if they keep Karlsson and don't trade him, is that they make that pick that they're giving to Colorado worse. That's the only motivation, and if they can stay out of, but that's pretty thin. That you're going to keep Karlsson and let him walk away for nothing.
For that, teams don't care about that.
Right. That's why I'm saying he's going to get traded, because that doesn't make sense to keep him.
Here's the other possibility. The other possibility is if they think will sell the team within a couple of years. Maybe they're trying to just get everybody off the path right now for that. And maybe they did get this money to help sign Carlson. They signed Carlson, and then he ends up getting traded after the team gets sold the same way Giancarlo Stanton did from the Miami Marlins. I knew the minute he signed that deal, he was never going to stay with the team. But it doesn't mean he won't sign a deal with the team.
Yeah, but Russ, he's not going to sign with Melnick. He's not going to.
You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Melnick may finally want out because of this debt. I mean, he is a billionaire, but again, he's been talking about swimming in debt for years. He may have finally reached his limit. We don't know that.
That's a fair point, Russ. I mean, the other thing with this is there a trust issue between Carlson and the Senators? Because to what you're saying, Russ, is a really good point. You might be able to trade Carlson, and he may want to be traded, but it might become easier if you get 8 years instead of 7. Right? Like in terms of sign him and trade and keep everything smooth and make that deal of a promise we're going to trade you, because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And such, rather than him going to market, we trade him to the best offer we can get, but that's not the place he wants to stay.
Right.
So therefore our return isn't as good because he could go a UFA if something doesn't go well. So there's a whole bunch of variables here. I'm just not sure. I'm not sold that Pierre Dorion is the guy who can pull this off with the best return for the Senators. That's the problem I see in this whole scenario.
That's legitimate. It really is, and and a lot of people are saying the same thing. I heard an interview yesterday. They were playing on XM. They were playing the 12 biggest moments of last year, and one of them was the Duchesne trade. And they had a Matt Duchesne interview, and Duchesne says it was so difficult for me to request this trade because obviously he's a big grew up as Sakic was right and all this stuff. But I really had to go to a team that had a chance to win. I'd been through too many rebuilds already, and I needed to go to a team that had a chance to win. And this is Duchesne talking about going to Ottawa. Okay?
Right.
And in the press conference, he said, really, I just can't go. I can't go through another rebuild. I can't do it. He says this. It's really fascinating. So now Duchesne is in the same spot. Now he is a year away. He's a UFA a year from now too. And very few people are talking about this because I've heard people say, "Oh, he loves it in Ottawa." Does he? Well,
he's from the area, so we assume he does. We don't know.
Right.
We assume he does, but still, listening to that reasoning that he gave he's going through a bigger rebuild than any place he could possibly be in the NHL.
The cluster that is going on in Ottawa is far more far-reaching than just Carlson. Stone and CC are RFAs. You just mentioned Duchesne. You've got Craig Anderson, who reportedly is asked for a trade. So it's a complete and utter mess, and that's not conducive to a team turning it around quickly. That's what I'm saying. It looks more like let's strip it bare. Let's trade for young prospects and let's rebuild.
Well, I'll tell you, in breaking news, if you check out Matt Duchesne's Twitter, there's somebody named Vince who maybe is a brother or a dad who is clearly a real estate broker selling houses, and Matt keeps retweeting them.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. No. At the on the goaltending scene, I'm sure you will be heartened by the news that Andy Strickland was reporting that Carter Hutton is bound for Buffalo, and that move makes a total amount of sense when you consider the Sabres want to probably bring Linus Ullmark in as the number one, but not overload him. Ullmark can play, say, 40 to 45 games. Hutton can play 30 to 35 or something like that. And they have a 1A, 1B scenario. But I clearly think that the Sabres' aim is that Ullmark be their number one. And if they don't pay Hutton too much, then that's a good signing for their goaltending tandem.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing. Too much. He's coming off a career year. There's no way to get this guy at a low price. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about
if you need a year stopgap, you take Steve Mason and something from the Jets and let him do it. That's the best solution.
Right. I don't see an agenda being floated here, Peter.
No,
it's true. I agree. I agree in the sense that, Hutton, you're going to be on the hook for 3 or 4 years. He's not going to take a 2-year deal anymore. And he's probably going to get $4 million or more. I mean,
no, not a chance. I will bet you, and a friendly bet here, I will bet you he signs a 3-year deal from anywhere between 2.5 to 3.
Oh, I think he's going to get more than that. Okay.
I think it's gonna be more than that too, Mike.
Okay, well, we'll compare notes.
Yeah.
Friendly bet.
Friendly bet.
Whoever loses buys the Indian Fusion in Vancouver next
year. You don't have an opinion on this? You're strangely silent on this.
I know. I just can't tell you all the things that are coming through my texting as I'm trying to do it.
Which means I'm right. That's what it means.
Where we? Oh, you're talking about how much Carter Hutton. I'm sorry. Yes. I think he is going to get $4 million.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well then. Okay.
No, I really do. I mean, I really do. Talking to people, I think he's going to.
Well,
I wouldn't be shocked at all. Put it that way.
But Peter, is there any news out of Winnipeg regarding them being able to move Mason out to clear some space?
There is not a sniff of anything about what the Jets want to do. And the last quote from Kevin Cheveldayoff, who I happened to see 2 nights ago, sitting on a restaurant patio not far from my house, relaxing with his wife and daughter, looking very chill, out in a beautiful summer evening, bottle of wine, and they were having a grand old time. The last thing he said was there with Paul Stastny was there's a few moving parts here. And that's the last media thing he said. Again, this organization went into lockdown the second the draft ended, and there's been very little. Basically, everyone's talking about the prospect camp, and which is ongoing right now, and that's it. It's there's nothing.
So, if you had to handicap who of the veteran players besides Mason would be a target to be moved elsewhere, would you say it would be Perreault? Would you say it would be Myers? Okay.
Perreault and Myers. The return on Perreault would not be as good as Perreault is to the Jets, so you're weakening the team that way. The return on Mason and Myers is one that would be less, but the loss of them wouldn't affect the Jets as much as, well, that's what many believe. Right. So Mason for sure. Myers is a bit of a wild card in that play, because when he's good, he's a very competent D-man, but the good has not been there. And I'm thinking, do you believe in the contract season thing? Because Myers isn't coming into a contract year. Do you get that bump out of him in that year of play because he's playing for his next big deal? That's the belief, because of where his salary sits. He's in the unusual spot of the backdiving contracts, $3.5 million actual cash, $5.5 million cap hit. That solves your problem right there. And then, or at least it moves it till the next year. But then you have Mason coming off the books after next season. You're sort of giving yourself at least 2 years to fit Stastny in if the salary comes in at a realistic amount, which I think I believe for the Jets would be in that 5.5 million range. I think that's a fair amount, coming down 2 million from 7.5. I just don't think I don't think he would demand a Marleau type contract from the Jets, given the situation that he has here and that he liked it. But you never know, right? But that's basically what the options are.
So here's my question to you, Peter. With Eric Comrie being very close now, is Hutchinson even going to get a contract offer? What are they going to do?
This is a big mystery, because we had a weird thing happen last year where Hutchinson didn't really like to be available for the media, and there was a belief that he had an incredible season in the AHL. He came up and played well with the Jets when he had to. But it's believed that he asked for a trade, and that was reported by someone who sort of does some part-time work for The Athletic, who's a former broadcaster for the New England Sports Network and for Sportsnet, who now is the communications assistant for the Premier of Manitoba, which is like your governor. So she does a few things. So I'm not sure how she got this scoop that no one else did, but apparently she did. And Hutchinson is engaged to a lady here who runs a cake shop, makes very special macaroons that people like to line up for, who's fairly embedded in the community. I'm not sure she's able to jump up and just move the shop that she owns with her sister. So there's a bit of a funky thing there. I don't know where that stands. And,
You're telling me a macaroon shop is working its way into this negotiation.
I'm telling you that Hutchinson has some things to consider with his personal life about whether, as an NHL player, he wants to take maybe his last chance to get a decent deal.
But I can solve this problem. You have a heavy Jewish population in Winnipeg. The Jewish people could easily buy out that macaroon store. We all love macaroons.
Yeah, that's true. You do.
How old is Hutchinson?
Hutchinson, I think, is 29 or 30. I'll tell you right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's not ready. He's nowhere close. Especially goaltenders. He's nowhere close to being ready to hanging him up or
Hutchinson's 28.
Yeah. No, he's gonna.
Good macaroon, that's not easy to find.
I mean, if Hutchinson signs with the Jets, it will certainly not be. I mean, he's got to clear waivers, right? And he won't take a two-way deal,
right?
There's no way. And he was making $1 million in the AHL last year, and he lit it up. He played really well. So there's a whole bunch of variables here, and I think the biggest thing that, I mean, it's the right problem to have, but for Winnipeg, Connor Hellebuck basically figured it out last offseason, came into the league and boom, had got his chance after Mason had 2 shaky starts and he was off and running and he never looked back.
You have something to report. Pierre LeBrun's reporting like Rob Blake has been in negotiations with Drew Doughty this week. Not done yet, but clearly they're going to sign him. Like that's a done deal.
Yeah, and the figure that they were leaking out was anywhere between $11 and $12 million.
Holy mother!
Which is basically the same.
His mom can make a really good black and white cookie. In which case,
which is basically the same percentage as Kopitar has got on his $10 million deal. But Peter, Winnipeg and Toronto are in a similar boat in the sense that like the Leafs have. They have Sparks and they have Calvin Pickard, and Elliot Friedman reported that they're fielding offers for those guys because there are so many teams out there looking for backup goaltenders. So I would think that Hutchinson wouldn't have a problem finding an opportunity out there, but if he wants to stay close to Winnipeg,
again, it's a really interesting situation and one that we just don't have any information on. I mean, I'm half tempted to walk down to the cake shop today and just stick a microphone in Jenna's face and say, "What's going on with your husband?" and see what I get back.
Send me one of those.
And Michael Hutchinson again. I say this a few times. Winnipeg's a small place, so when I say, hey, someone lives near me, I don't live in some exclusive neighborhood or fancy things. I live in a very average place. We're just a small place, but I live very centrally located in the city. I'm really close to downtown. And stuff. Michael Hutchinson doesn't live that far away from me, and in fact, he lives 2 doors down from. I know, Russ. I'm sorry. He lives 2 doors down from a friend of my son's who used to play hockey with, and he's super cool. He's a really chilled out guy. He's in the community. A ton of renovations to his very modest, simple house that he and his fiance live in, and they're there. And I don't. He may want to strike out to make money, but there's a lot of things at play here for a young guy who's in a relationship at 28 years old, has some big choices to make, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
There was one little nugget yesterday when Pierre LeBrun was on local Toronto radio that we've speculated about, and I think if the Leafs do hit the jackpot and sign Tavares, is probably going to come to fruition. They simply cannot, going forward, pay the big 3 and Tavares if they sign Tavares. And essentially, LeBrun said, well, more than likely what's going to happen is that they're going to flip William Nylander for a defenseman. And he wasn't speculating. He didn't say this is going to happen. He just threw out the name of somebody who has been in sort of the trade winds right now that might be a possibility, and the name that was mentioned was Colton Parayko. That it would be a Nylander Parayko deal might be something that would be in the realm of something that would make sense. And if honestly, if the Leafs can pull off getting Tavares and swapping Nylander for Parayko, they're your leading Stanley Cup contender right now.
How in the world is Parayko available? I mean, I find that just
I don't know. But his name has been out there the last few weeks. It doesn't make a lot of sense because he's a good defenseman.
Like what?
Is it a Dougie Hamilton situation? Maybe he doesn't like it in St. Louis anymore. I don't know. I don't see that.
I can't believe that.
He's there. Yeah. I mean, you could get anybody from that team except for him, I was told. So I mean, that's big. Even there are.
I would think Peter
Tarasenko than him. That's what's his name about that.
I would think Peter Angelo is the number one on their list. They're not going to trade him, but I don't know.
If you made them trade one of them, I'm not convinced that they wouldn't trade him. I mean, I'm not the source of the rumor. Yeah, so.
Yeah, that's you know what, I've seen his name come up, but I didn't really put much stock into it, Mike. But that's wow.
I mean, I'm not saying
underestimate, right?
And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I am saying that, and the example that was used, and if you think about it, way back in ancient history, the Leafs, when they signed Cujo, their number one goalie was Felix Potvin. They still had Felix Potvin. And then what they did was they traded Felix Potvin for Brian Berard. And if it wasn't for the bad injury, that probably would have been a successful pick of swapping a goaltender for a defenseman. That's what you do. You trade from areas of strength. That's asset management. That's what if you can get Tavares. I heard somebody saying, well, the Leafs are way too strong up the middle. There's no need to get John Tavares. Bull crap. There's no need to get John Tavares.
Here's a factor. And Peter, you could speak to this, but it's been like this for a little while. And as we sit here today, the Canadian dollar is 76 cents to the U.S. dollar. That may affect some teams in free agency.
Yeah, it certainly will. These guys, they hedge their currency pretty good, and they
Yeah, but you can't hedge it all the way. Like there's you could have U.S. accounts, you could get away with certain things, but if the Canadian dollar stays down, like for teams, it's going to hurt them.
Yep, it is. It's going to affect some owners certainly. My understanding, and I'll speak for this at least in Winnipeg, is that some of the metrics that they use are pricing for their revenue, at least within stadiums and stuff like that, and other streams that they have, are pricing against the idea of currency fluctuations. That they've got some pretty interesting economic ways of doing this. Right. So back in the 90s, when this reared its head and became a major significant issue, and we had the Canadian Assistance Plan and stuff like that, which still exists, I understand. Mm-hmm. For the currency fluctuations, no one was really that prepared for it, and now it's part of their business modeling in a different way. Because you got to remember, at that point, through the end of the 80s and the 90s, contracts were slowly becoming U.S. dollar contracts, right? Like that was when some guys are still being paid in Canadian, others in U.S., and now it's straight U.S. dollars. So I don't think it's as big a concern. But it will, for a team like the Senators, it's a concern.
Yeah, and for a team
probably like the Oilers, it's a bit of a concern. For the Jets, it's a concern, but I think they've managed that, and they also have the 25th richest person in the world who can, he can manage that arbitrage for the Jets.
And for a team like Toronto, it's absolutely not a concern, especially since they just signed an agreement for changing the name of their arena for 800 million Canadian. So that it won't be a factor. I mean, they'll open up
Canadian, Mike. That's like 650 US. Just saying.
It doesn't matter, Russ. They were going to spend
to them
every single dollar that they need to make this team good.
Yep, exactly. They will. And, for the Canucks, that's still an interesting thing, because as far as it hasn't been denied, but the Canucks apparently are for sale. They're just not actively for sale.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Aquilini family has said they would take an offer. basically, and that's been reported out of Vancouver for some time now. It's just not an ongoing news story. It's like we do it, but we don't have to.
Yeah.
Maybe the Sedins will buy the Canucks.
I think that's all the time we have, guys, for today. There's so much going on. I apologize for being kind of quiet on this podcast. There's a lot happening. We will be back on Sunday, Canada Day, July 1st, around 11 a.m. Eastern time, so an hour before all this goes down. But between now and then, I have a feeling we're going to see so many things happen. The rumor chart's going to launch this afternoon. The rumor tracker is going to launch this afternoon, probably around 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because there's just so many things put up there. And so really, just enjoy this. Like I said, I think in the next hour or so, we might get a good idea on Tavares. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see what happens. Remember that the buzz is just hockey. We will see you on Sunday. See you on Sunday. Stop being